Dominus vobiscum, amigos, and welcome back to another episode of the Donut Sunday podcast. So, I really think that you're going to enjoy today. We've got another episode of the interview show, and today I'm talking to Jesus, who's a good friend of mine. And we talk about his conversion from being a Jehovah's Witness to being a Catholic. We talk a little bit about what drew him to the church and what the challenges are of living a countercultural faith in today's world, which seems to be increasingly hostile towards the faith. So like I said, I really think that you're going to enjoy it. Thanks for joining us, and away we go. And with that, we'll start off the interview with my good friend Jesus. Jesus, how's it going?
Good. Good to be here with you, Jim. How are things going on your end?
They're going well. They're going quite well. Thanks. And I appreciate you being on here for kind of the second episode of this little intrepid podcast. So thank you very much for doing that. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
Anytime. Good to be here with you too.
So if you don't mind, maybe we could just start off by introducing yourself to the listeners, who you are, what you do for a living, maybe kind of what your family life looks like and everything like that right now.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so again, my name is Jesus. I'm 40 years old. Just recently married. Me and my wife just got married back in April during the height of the...
Yeah, in the middle of the COVID craziness.
Right. Yes. Yes, a very, very interesting experience, but grateful nonetheless for the way it all worked out. There's a whole other story to that, but yes, we were recently married, and we're expecting our first child on the way. He should be coming around. So far, they've given us the date of January 19th, so we're looking forward to that. It's
Congratulations!
Exciting. Thank you. And yeah, so I've been Catholic for only 2.5 years now. I came into the church back in the Easter Vigil of 2018. Yeah, so thanks be to God for that. I was formerly, I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually and I think the way that worked out was my mom got into it. She got into the Jehovah's Witness organization sometime around her mid-20s. You know, it was strange how that worked out because her family, they were all Catholic back home in Mexico, mm-hmm. and they came from a family of 12, and it seemed like every time someone would come over to the States, they'd end up converting to Jehovah's Witnesses. And,
oh wow!
Yeah, it's really strange. And so she was one of several from her family that converted. And so that's what we were brought up as, Jehovah's Witnesses, and around, I want to say around the age of 13 or 14, that was when I decided that I couldn't continue on anymore as Jehovah's Witness. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of questions, a lot of doubts about their teachings and their beliefs, and I would always get the same answer: well, you just don't understand yet. It'll be clear to you as you get older. Mm-hmm. With more study, and I wasn't satisfied with that. I wasn't convinced that was going to keep me around. So I just decided on my own to leave, to stop attending the meetings and participating within the organization. And so I strayed away, and I've been pretty much strayed away well into my 20s. I want to say, I guess I was agnostic the whole time.
Sure.
I didn't necessarily deny the existence of God. I just wasn't convinced of any one particular faith or view. And it wasn't until, I guess, my mid-20s, conversation with a coworker of mine kind of rekindled my interest in my interest for Christ. Mm-hmm. And he was a Protestant, and so of course he was giving me the Protestant view of things, and
sure,
and so and then just from there it just kind of snowballed, and just more and more, I became convinced that this is the way I want to go when I come back into Christianity. But I always thought I was going to do it the right way. Mm-hmm. Whatever that meant, and so it was an experience. It was a journey, finding my way into the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I always remembered for years. I said that'd be the last thing I would ever be is Catholic.
Uh-huh.
Because you're growing up your whole life, especially within Jehovah's Witnesses, you hear all the myths and misconceptions about the Catholic Church, and that's what I grew up with. I'm sure you've heard those too. Everything from worship statues to you're making gods out of Mary and
Mm-hmm.
saints and whatnot, and so
Right.
yeah, so and so yeah, so eventually I think so I got to a point basically where I decided I was going to be um, I think I was actually a Baptist or something like that. I chose
Mm-hmm.
that because I was following a lot of several Protestant preachers and ministers on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and I like what they said, and I thought I was convinced at that point that's the way I wanted to go, and in fact at that point I was even looking for a church nearby to get baptized into,
Mm-hmm.
and and it wasn't until I saw went back on YouTube, and so the one pastor I'm referring to is, and I'm sure you've heard of him. His name is Dr. James White,
Sounds
and
familiar. Yeah.
yeah, so brilliant guy, but he had a recent at that point it was recent. He had a debate with Trent Horn,
Mm. Of
and,
Catholic Answers
and
fame.
yes, Catholic
Mm-hmm.
Answers exactly, and I think the question was, can someone lose their salvation?
Oh,
And
okay.
for those of you who follow or who know about certain Protestant basics, they believe that you cannot lose your salvation.
Yeah, like a once saved, always saved sort of a
Yes,
thing. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And so I figured, oh, this should be an interesting debate, and it was a great debate. I love watching those debates, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That you're talking about 2 3 hour debates, and I think most people would be put to sleep by then, but I personally enjoy it.
You can
And
kind of dig into the substance of the issues.
oh, absolutely, absolutely, it's fascinating. And so and I remember I began to watch it and I'm thinking, okay, well, James White is going to destroy this Trent Horn guy,
Mm-hmm.
and to my amazement, Trent Horn put on a fantastic presentation.
Cool.
And what impressed me even more was that he did it straight from the Bible. And a lot of Protestants will, that's another misconception. They'll say the Catholics don't use the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Or, they'll use something else or whatever. They'll make up doctrine. But it was very biblically sound what he was teaching. And so now I I got this whole new I don't know, like I got all these new questions now running through my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just led me down that path. And then so I looked up, I Googled Trent Horn, where he's from, what he's about, found Catholic Answers, and I think ever since then, I would watch it every day on YouTube, and I'd listen to it, and it was
Awesome.
just amazing. It just led me down. It led me down. I want to say that was like the turning point for me. It led me down to Catholicism,
Mm-hmm.
and then and yeah, and I got to the point where I decided at that point this is where I need to be, and so
Beautiful.
and so yes, and so with that in mind, I looked for the local parish nearby and decided, I need to become Catholic. And I remember even telling the RCIA director, I said, if I can do it today, I'd like to do it today. And she said, well, it doesn't work like that. We got to give it some time. You got to go through RCIA.
Mm-hmm.
I said, understood, understood. All right. So, but yes, sign me up. Let's get to it right away. And
Mm-hmm.
and so and so that's when I came into the church. I was the Easter Vigil 2018. I remember that because that was on March 31st, and I know that because the following day, April 1st, that was the feast day of St. Hugh,
Oh.
and St. Hugh is actually the parish I came into. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, so it was a neat little coincidence there.
For sure.
Uh, And so, yeah, ever since then, I, I love it. I never look back. I know I made the right decision. I made the right choice here. Um, and thanks be to God.
Yeah,
This is the way
absolutely.
it turned out.
That's fantastic. It's so cool to hear people's conversion stories too, because I mean, for me, I was always a cradle Catholic, so I was, born and raised into a Catholic family and everything. And I mean, I guess I wasn't technically a revert because I never really technically left the faith, but
Hmm.
uh, I kind of had a sort of a similar experience to you, where I mean, when I went off to college, it was kind of um, more agnostic, not really sure. I remember I was going to mass on a college campus at one point, and I remember like putting my hand in the holy water font and like really sitting back and thinking like, is this something that I actually believe? And then it was really it happened to be a philosophy gen ed course that I was taking that year in college, and it was it's a private college, but it wasn't religiously affiliated. We were just going through Plato, and I remember Plato being kind of the big turning point for me in terms of like, let me think about my life and about what's really true and what's really real. And I mean, I guess I kind of came to uh, came to the faith through the holy pagans, I guess. Plato and Aristotle was kind of my entry, but I mean, it was kind of a similar sort of a thing to you, as finding information about these different philosophers and these different theologians and apologists and really digging into the big questions. So that's awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, growing up, I remember, especially in elementary school, um, at school, 90% of the school population was Hispanic, just like me,
Hmm.
and almost all of them were Catholic. I
Sure.
think, I think maybe it might have been one and maybe one other kid. It was something other than Catholic,
Hmm.
and I remember, yeah, always hearing the kids complain about having to go to CCD classes after school.
Hmm.
They complain about that, or they complain about going to mass on Sundays. And and um, and so one of the things I would ask, well, how long is your mass? And they'd say, well, it's only an hour. I'm like, an hour? That's it? You only do it once a week? I think, as a Jehovah's Witness, I would have to attend meetings 3 times a week, and each meeting would run about 2 hours. And so,
It's a different sort of
and
a thing at that point.
it is. And then on top of that, we had to be dressed. We had to be in business professional attire, which meant suit, tie, and whereas the other kids, they could show up in any clothes they wanted to.
Right.
And and so I just thought it was odd, growing up hearing that they would complain about an hour of their week. Um, but also looking back, I'm also kind of envious of them too. That guys like such as you and others that have been cradle Catholics, you've had that experience your whole lives, and
Hmm.
and I'm kind of jealous and envious of that. I wish I was born Catholic and had the experience of going to CCD classes and
Hmm.
growing up with the faith and the way you guys did. I'm sure you've had many graces and blessings throughout your whole life from it.
For sure. And I mean, maybe it's sort of a situation where, especially being born and raised Catholic, you kind of, I use this analogy sometimes, and I'm not even sure where it comes from, but kind of when you're born and raised, it almost seems like grandma's wallpaper, kind of, like it's something that's familiar and it's always
Yep.
there, but you never really pay attention to it. And I think uh, when I look at sort of a looking at from the lens of a convert, like you've always kind of you had that zeal right from the beginning where it's like, yes, this is something that I've chosen and that I really want to kind of make this huge part of my life and really devote myself to. Whereas, a lot of the time that I, spent as a Catholic, I probably was not really soaking up the graces that I could have been. And I mean, I guess there's kind of a little bit of maybe the grass is greener sort of a feeling, but it's like, man, sometimes you just feel that like, oh, I've wasted time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um,
Yes.
so that's definitely true. So that's It's a beautiful witness, though, to be able to come into the faith like that after so many years as a Jehovah's Witness, and then years afterwards, just kind of as an agnostic, looking around at what might be true, what might be untrue, where the truth lies, really.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I feel, you know, in a way, you feel lost.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, you think you have the freedom to do whatever you want and to think any way you want and to act on whatever impulse you have, but then you find out that's not really freedom. That's that you're not really liberated in any way. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not until you find home and you know and you find true freedom in you know in removing yourself from the things of the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always go back to the St. Augustine quote, our hearts are restless until they rest in you. It's
Yes,
definitely true.
beautiful, beautiful quote.
Mm-hmm. So now, what are you doing for a living now? Uh,
Yeah, so now I'm in the petrochemical industry. So I
okay.
work for a major oil and gas company, and I work as a what's called a terminal operator. And so, just real quick on that. So basically, in the petrochemical industry, you can divide it, I guess, into three different divisions. So first off, you have what's called upstream, and so upstream refers to basically like drilling for oil, doing oil exploration, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have downstream, which refers to basically like refining and chemical manufacturing. And then you have what I do, and that's called midstream. And so midstream is basically shipping and transportation and sales of a finished product. And so what we do is we run a terminal, is what they call it anyway. And a terminal has several different functions. And so basically, it receives finished product from our refinery. And so they'll ship it to us via pipeline. And so we have storage, huge storage tanks. So we have right now we have 12 of them, and so they ship us, finished product. We keep it in storage there, and then we ship it out. We have two outbound pipelines that ship out, the finished product, and we also have what we call a loading rack. And so it's basically trucks that arrive and they buy finished product from us as well, and then they in turn send it to the gas station. So that's how you get your gas at the gas station. Yeah, and so there's a whole lot of things that go to maintaining and running a terminal, and so that's what I get to do. A lot of it is mostly outdoors. I would say about 80 to 85% of it is outdoor stuff. A lot of hands-on.
Awesome.
Um, and then you do get a little bit of computer stuff. You get to play around with pipeline scheduling and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's actually it's a fascinating industry. I just got into it less than a year ago. My youngest brother, he worked as a terminal operator for 7 years for a different company,
Oh,
and so he
wow.
told me, yeah, so he told me all about it, and it just sounded fascinating, and so I decided I'd get into that too. Prior to that, I was working for an IT company, and that was all office work. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a typical 9 to 5 Monday through Friday type of gig,
Sure.
um, and so nothing really exciting there. Um, but the lifestyle was more predictable, more normal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas now it's a little irregular. Sometimes you'll be in for longer hours. Sometimes you got to come in weekends. It changes a lot. So that's the one thing is you do have to be a little flexible with it. But as of right now, I'm enjoying it. I'm having a blast with it. So it certainly didn't disappoint for me.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I mean, I'm an engineer by education, so that kind of stuff is always fascinating to me. Just incoming
Oh,
product, just that entire industry is just there's so much technology there. It's like
yeah,
makes me geek
yeah.
out a little bit, but that's awesome.
Well, if I ever get the opportunity to invite you over, I'll definitely invite you over. Normally we don't have visitors, but you never know. In the future that might change. So,
That would be sick. I would love it. So, kind of like moving from your work life now, what does your spiritual life look like? I mean, like mass and prayer and maybe devotions or particular saints or something like that?
yeah. So, so of course, just to start out, yeah, we attend our daily, I'm sorry, rather our Sunday mass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my wife and I, well, you know, well, well, thankfully, let me step back a little bit. Now, at least in our area, a lot of the churches have finally reopened,
Sure.
after the whole COVID, lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're starting to see more regular um, attendance at masses.
Awesome.
Um, and so, and then the one in particular that we like to attend is we like to attend the TLM.
Hey, Editorial Jim here, and I've come from the future with an urgent message to let you know that TLM stands for Traditional Latin Mass, also known as the Extraordinary Form. It's where the Mass is celebrated in Latin and the priest faces ad orientem, or towards the east.
At one of our parishes here where we live, and and the TLM that I would say that's probably another thing that kind of drew me into the church. As I was reading books and listening to Catholic answers and stuff, you'd come across, and I'm sure you've seen this too on social media and YouTube and whatnot. You have a lot of Catholics who tend to be more traditional minded,
Mm-hmm.
and and so that was a whole new thing for me as well, to have to pick up on that, the nuances between the
For sure.
traditional Catholics and all that, and and yeah, the TLM is absolutely, I mean, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful. It just drew me in a way that it pulled me in, and it just kept me in, and and I think ever since then it's been a love affair with the TLM, and so yeah, so and again, also due to scheduling too, if our schedule allows for it,
Mm-hmm.
we'll attend it. But we certainly make every effort to attend the Sunday Mass rather. I think as of right now, it's still um, the Archdiocese still has given us the dispensation
Uh-huh.
for the Sunday Mass, but we still make the effort to attend anyway.
For sure.
Because it is the heart of our week, and and then before, when I was working at the IT company, I had the regular schedule, um, and I was single also, so I had more time to myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to attend daily mass every day.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
yeah, so they had a really nice schedule that worked out, where they had a daily mass available, in the evening, and so I know as soon as I'd head out to work, as soon as I was done with work, I'd head over, and and there was already a group of ladies, and this was a mass in Spanish, and so
Mm-hmm.
you'd have like the same group of 10 or 15 ladies. They go to
Mm-hmm.
the daily mass all the time, and so it was awesome. They welcomed me, and they brought me into their little group, and they showed me around. They showed me the prayers. They would say they'd always start out with the rosary right before mass. Um, any uh, litanies as well. They'd say. Um, and at that particular parish, they also had confessions before mass, and so they'd always encourage me to go to confession afterwards. It was great, and
That's
they give
beautiful.
me, they give me rosaries, they give me prayer cards. I loved it. It was so great to be welcomed
Mm-hmm.
into to the parish like that. And so yeah, so I got to go to daily mass every day, um, and um, and then also I got into more devotion. So one of my favorite devotions is the brown scapular,
Mm.
and so I wear that every day. Um, and and what's funny about the brown scapulars is it's sometimes like I'll have it tucked under my work clothes, but sometimes it'll kind of just peek out, and then
Uh-huh.
you'll get to see a little bit of it, And so my coworkers see it, and one in particular, he keeps asking about it. He's like, "Hey, what's that?" And I say, "Oh, it's the brown scapular." And as a joke, he would always say, "I want that, I want that." That's his joke at work. He wants everything.
Sure.
And so he said that about my brown scapular, and I said to him, "Really, you want a brown scapular?" And so he said, "Yes, yes," and I got him one. So I told him the only condition is you'll have to wear it.
There's more than
So
one way to evangelize.
yes, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was pretty neat. How just simply someone saying, brown scapular, or saying maybe you're wearing a crucifix, that alone really does evangelize.
Hmm.
Um, Another thing, I like also wearing the miraculous medal.
Nice.
Um, yes, and then the green scapular. I wore that. That was probably the first scapular I wore, even before I came into the church. It's supposed to be the green scapular conversion,
Hmm.
and then afterwards, and as soon as I learned about the fivefold scapular, I started wearing that too. So,
There you go. You got
so
scapulars all over the place.
yes,
Beautiful.
yeah, yeah. And so, and then another thing, and then I do also wear a Saint Benedict crucifix, so with the Saint Benedict medal on
Nice.
it. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful sacramentals.
Hmm.
We keep holy water here at home, blessed salt,
Hmm.
um, blessed candles as well, um, and then prayer life. I basically follow the prayers from Relevant Radio, from listening in the mornings. They'll
Hmm.
start out with the daily offering. They'll say the Angelus throughout the day.
Hmm.
Um, and then with Drew Mariani, he'll say the Chaplet of Divine Mercy.
Nice.
Later on in the evening, they also say the Rosary. Um, and then same thing, prayer to your patron saint. In my case, I chose Saint James the Greater as my patron saint.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and and then the liturgy of the hours. Although I haven't been doing that as much, it's usually I would catch a lot of that mostly after mass, especially on Sunday.
Hmm.
Um, they would say I guess it would be like the midday prayers, or the yeah, we'd catch it just in time to say it along with the other parishioners.
That's awesome.
Um, so it's things I'm trying to work into my routine. Um, and then another thing that's really fun for me is just researching and reading up on things like apparitions and miracles, Eucharistic miracles.
Hmm.
Um, it's amazing. This the 2,000 years of history and tradition and just miracles, and I mean it's been nonstop from the beginning. And I would say also, the spiritual readings. I know we read the Catechism during our CIA, and and same thing. The Catechism is fantastic. It's just the way everything's laid out. It's
Hmm.
easy to follow. It clearly explains the teachings of the church. Um, and that's something that I was looking for as well. Um, I'm really grateful that a resource like that is available.
Hmm.
And I try to, as much as I can, I try to follow, especially, because, and again, I go back to Catholic Answers. So they have so many, great speakers and writers there. Like a lot of Patrick Madrid's books, and Trent Horn's,
Hmm.
Tim Staples, all great guys. And so, as much as I can, I try to pick up.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's really that's heartening that you guys went through the catechism in our CIA, because I think that that's sort of a misconception that a lot of people have about the church is that it's like, there was a whole bunch of stuff right at the beginning, and maybe there were a couple of people in the Middle Ages, but more or less it's just been kind of this static, old, musty religion for 2,000 years. And it's like, no, like you were talking about, the catechism was written in what, 19 in the 1980s, I think it was, that the newest catechism was released. And it's like you talked about the apparitions that have been going on throughout, history, the miracles that have gone throughout history, all of the different thinkers who have thought at all of these different times, all the way through the ages. And it's like, I think that, being able to study those things, read up on those, really learn about them is such a great aid to the faith, and that we do have as Catholics this 2,000-year history of art and science and philosophy and theology and piety that we can refer back to, which is one of the most glorious things about the faith, I think. That's awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to me, it just, the more you read up on it, the more it just reaffirms for me the truth in, in Catholicism. That always reminds me of, when I say the truth, it reminds me of the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they would use that phrase for themselves as well. So whenever they'd ask another Jehovah's Witness, how long have you been a Jehovah's Witness, they'll phrase it as, how long have you been the truth?
Ah.
and,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just thought it was funny, but yeah, the truth is here. This is where you'll find it, and it, and the more you look into it, the more you'll be convinced, as I am.
That's beautiful. So I guess we can kind of use that sort of as a segue. What do you think that your faith life contributes to your work life and your family life? I guess how do you kind of see that play out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess for me, the one thing that, if I could just pin it on one thing, it would be walking the straight and narrow path. Um, you hear that talked about it. I think it was in Matthew
Mm-hmm.
chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. Where it talks about the broad path that leads to destruction, and the straight and narrow path that leads to life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and so, looking back in my prior life before coming into the church, that was the path I was walking on. I was walking on the broad path that led to destruction. And in hindsight, yeah, I could see how, the actions, the decisions I was making at the time, and my frame of mind, and it was going to lead me down a path of destruction for sure. Um, and so it wasn't until I finally, when I did come into the church and we started learning about, your purpose and the purpose of life and your purpose here on earth, and what God wants of you, and you put all that into focus, put it into perspective, and now you start to prioritize your life, and you know you need to put God first, and that's how you need to order your life. And to me, once I did that, everything just kind of came in line. And so now you know, I don't worry about anything else. Like, I mean, sure, I have the same worries as anyone else, right? Day-to-day things and whatnot, but at the same time, I'm not worried.
Mm-hmm.
It's to me, it really is faith in action. You do your part, and God will do His.
Mm-hmm.
He won't let you down. And so for me, that was important. So I get my life in order. I make Him, you know, first in my life always, and everything else will follow. Um, and then another beautiful thing about coming into the church, we teach that, our bodies are temples, especially, as and we receive the sacraments of baptism and, confirmation. The Holy Spirit now dwells within us,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start to see the fruits and the gifts of the Holy Spirit, finally start to, come to bear, and now there's a whole different, approach to life. Whereas before I'd be really angry and upset over some things. Now I don't react the same way. I try to always look at things with charity, and patience, and to take that approach, and let the Holy Spirit, dwell and work within you, rather than to allow yourself to be overtaken um, by your own demons. I guess, if that, I don't know if that'd be a good word or not, but
Oh, for
um,
sure, your own demons, your own emotions, everything that you're bringing to the table every day.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so, yeah, so for me, that was such a great blessing that I could receive the Holy Spirit. And it also and the change in me, and my friends, my friends will see it, family members, coworkers, especially people who've known me before my conversion. They see that change in you. Um, People who have never met me before, they see a person, you know, I mean, they don't obviously haven't seen me before. They don't know what I was like before, but they do see someone who is letting God work within them, and um, and I think that's important to be because it's important to also give a good witness, to give
Mm-hmm.
witness to your faith, and what better way than by your actions. What's that quote? They always attribute to Saint Francis of Assisi.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, preach the gospel at all times. Use words if necessary. Now, I don't know if there's question as to whether he even made that quote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I like it nonetheless.
Yeah, the sentiment's definitely good.
Yes. And so I think that's a great way of putting it. And because people need to see that also through your actions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I guess another thing would be, it also, um, I would say it also led to my marriage. God blessed me with,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with with uh, with my wife and the marriage I'm in now. Um, Before then I didn't really have any plans of being married. I didn't know what I would do in regards to marriage or having a family life. Um, and if I did think about it just wasn't. It wouldn't have been the way I would have liked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, looking back, if I had gotten married before, it probably would have been a disaster. So
Well,
I
yeah, I'm
just,
sure that the faith affects the values that you're looking at in a spouse, like where you're looking for that spouse, like what kind of a life you want to lead, what kind of
right,
values you're going to enshrine as a family.
exactly. Like, yeah, like most simplest of decisions. Can you come to agreement? I know in past relationships where we've talked about you know, marriage or starting a family, one of the first questions that comes up is what religion to raise children in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and at that time, again, I wasn't really following any particular um, any faith. So I was a little indifferent to that. It's like, well, if we do have kids, I could care either way. I could care less either way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but but now, having come into the faith, now I know what is important, what is in the best interests of our kids, and and to really honor God and to honor the blessings and graces that He's given us, and so yes, it's important, that we follow His way, and so I'm grateful that now, having come into the faith, I understand now what is important, and I think from here on it's going to be a very a fruitful marriage and a very uh, a great blessing. And that's all I could ever ask for, really. Um,
That's awesome.
yeah, and then I would say also, certainly changes in things that I probably would have done before that I'm not proud of to have done, but
Sure.
you know, um, certainly now I take a step back and I say, is this really what I'm about to do or what I'm contemplating doing? Is this really going to honor God? Is it really going to serve Him well here on earth? Um, and so now I'm noticing now my conscience started to become very more formed, much better formed than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, and of course that's an ongoing thing. You're constantly going to be learning and stuff,
100%. Yeah.
but I'm grateful that too is on the way. That's That's that to me now. That's very important to have a well-formed conscience and
Hmm.
to abide by God's precepts.
For sure. Yeah. And I think kind of piggybacking off of that too, it's like, I think that the faith life really helps you live out virtue and goodness in the small things as well. Like the small everyday, like I'm going to wash the dishes when, maybe it's not super convenient for me or something like that. Because I mean, I think, you know, everybody kind of has sort of this cultural philosophy. It's kind of in the zeitgeist of like, don't be a jerk. And it's like, well, okay, I mean, I think that without the faith, you could probably go through and, not murder people. And, you probably, like you can avoid the big mistakes, like just the crazy errors. But I think that kind of having that life of faith where you are praying and you're being attentive to God and His will for your life, like to be able to act with virtue in small things or things when nobody's looking, too. I think that that's a really huge thing that I think is something that's overlooked a lot of the time because when nobody's watching, it's awfully easy to just go off and, do this thing or that. But hugely
Yes,
important.
yes, exactly. And another phrase coming into the church I would hear a lot is offering it up. Yeah, I've
Mm-hmm.
never heard that before. And
Oh,
so when I started hearing it, I'd hear people explain it, and I said, okay, well that sounds nice, but what does it really mean? But now, and just like you said, once you start coming into things, little inconveniences, and it could be small things, it could be major things. But now I know what it means. So now, and that's another thing. I'll do that too. I'll offer it up, whatever suffering, whatever um, pain, misery, whatever you know, sad feelings, emotions, whatever.
mm-hmm.
Offer it up, just like you do in the morning offering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that to me that was huge too. So I'm grateful for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Small things with great love.
Yes, sir.
And then I guess kind of to looking to wrap things up here a little bit, but for the final question, what do you think is like one of the biggest challenges for lay Catholics today?
Yeah. So yeah. So that's a great question. Looking at the world today, what it's become. I'm 40 years old, and I remember how it was 10 years ago, even 20 years ago, maybe even 30 years ago, as a 10-year-old kid,
Mm-hmm.
and just seeing how much it has changed throughout the years in as little as 10 years. It's tremendous change.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we got going on today? We got um, a lot of the protesting and rioting and
Mm-hmm.
looting, and you got these groups, the BLM and Antifa, and
Mm-hmm.
you got Planned Parenthood. You got a lot of the liberal left wing, and I'm not trying to get into politics here. Don't get me wrong,
Sure.
but it just seems that they get more and more extreme.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer just shouting. It's physical. It's violent. It's aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't remember it being that bad before, and it just seemed like it got exponentially worse. Um, and we're talking about issues not to get into politics, but it's like these are things that um, go against teachings of the church. It goes against God's wishes. To have a group like Planned Parenthood,
Mm-hmm.
promote abortion as women's reproductive rights.
Mm-hmm.
It just, and I'm sorry to say this, but it comes off to me as very diabolical.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then you have groups like BLM. While I understand, they're trying to go for social justice. If you read their actual um, statement online, they're promoting a very Marxist agenda. So it's
Yeah.
like a lot of these groups, they have these hidden agendas, and they're all anti-Christian
Mm-hmm.
agendas, and that's what scares me the most. And so, what it makes it seem like now, it's countercultural to be Catholic.
100%.
And so now, and that's what I fear is going to be one of the biggest challenges for us as lay Catholics, is we may one day have to encounter some person from Planned Parenthood or a group of people. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
We might have to, our lives may be in danger at one point. They're certainly attacking our faith and our beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they're doing that on a daily basis. Um, and then having to deal with the peer pressure, because if it's not physical or violent, then it's just, you got this mob of people pressuring you into saying something that you don't want to say. I'm sure you've seen videos of that where,
Mm-hmm.
um, on social media where a group of BLMers will pressure some person on the street to shout some BLM slogan or something.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they'll be threatened to be beat up or whatever.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it just seems like kind of like the modern day persecution of Catholics.
Mm-hmm.
And I say Catholics in particular because, um, and while I certainly appreciate, Protestant Christians, also supporting pro-life measures and things, I would say that the Catholic Church has been consistent throughout her 2,000-year history here on Earth, 100% consistent. They've never wavered or changed, and they've stayed stuck to truth from the beginning till now. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's the one thing is, having to deal with this, and it could be a challenge.
Totally. And I mean, to be able to respond to it with charity, and to be able to really have a genuine conversation too, it just seems like, I don't know, like you said, I mean, I, I'm in my late 20s at this point, but even in my lifetime, I feel like the ability to have a real genuine conversation with people has just sort of, it just kind of fell off the cliff. And it's just, it doesn't seem like the situation is going to get better anytime
Yeah.
soon.
Yes, you're right. Yeah,
But,
and I remember there was a time, yeah, you could have a conversation, and at the end of the day, people could just agree to disagree,
hmm
and then still, go out for dinner, later on.
hmm
Um, sadly, it's just not like that anymore. And and yeah, I just think, whatever forces are at play there, they realize they're losing on one front, so they're stepping it up,
hmm
and I think that's where, as Catholics, lay Catholics especially, we have to be on guard and we have to be ready for it. Um, it doesn't look like it's going to ease up anytime soon,
hmm
but we have to keep on praying and fasting,
hmm
and we have to rely on God to handle this, and hopefully whatever we do endure, we can offer that up. We can, just like you said, we can try to be charitable and truly, live out our faith.
hmm
It's one thing to respond in kind. We can respond with violence and anger. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, what will that accomplish, right?
hmm
So it's so many things. It's so many things going on. But yeah, I think that's what we need to be looking at. We need to be focused on.
hmm And I guess one last kind of thought that just popped into my head as you were saying that. Um, the late Francis Cardinal George, who was Cardinal Archbishop of Chicago prior to Archbishop or Cardinal Supich, excuse me, um, said something that I always thought was kind of interesting. He said that he was just kind of talking offhand to a whole bunch of seminarians who happened to be gathered, and I might butcher this quote, so I might have to splice in audio where I kind of correct myself here. But he said something along the lines of, I expect to die in a bed, I expect my successor to die in prison, and I expect his successor to die a martyr in the public square. But then after that, the church will still be there to help recover and rebuild the remains and rubble of a society that had destroyed or kind of torn itself down, as the church has done so many times throughout its history. And I think that that's just a beautiful thing to kind of keep in mind as we move forward in I mean, when we're recording this, we're about a month away from the November 3rd election. Is it November 3rd or November 4th? That
Yes.
right at the beginning of November. Um, but as we're looking ahead at that, to remember that to keep the faith and to keep moving forward, it might get rough, but at the same time, the church is always going to be there to offer the tradition, the beauty, and the truth of God, and freely offer it to anybody who asks for it. So,
Exactly.
I mean, as much as that's kind of a tenuous and kind of uncertain time that we have, I think that that's kind of a good note to end on. That, it might be tough, but by keeping the faith, by praying, by going to the sacraments, that's how we keep moving forward.
Exactly. Exactly. As the Blessed Virgin Mary said, in the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We can't
absolutely.
necessarily promise temporal hope, but there's always eternal hope.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I think that's kind of a positive note to end on. So thank you very much for being here with me and going through this interview. It was fascinating to hear, especially about your conversion story and just about uh, all of your thoughts on different aspects of the faith and everything, different practices. Really
Oh,
appreciated the
thank you.
time.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for having me on. It's been a blast. I enjoyed it greatly, and I'm glad you learned something new about me. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks a lot.
all right, thanks again, Jim. God bless.
God bless.
And so that concludes our second episode of the interview show. If you found this content to be inspiring, uplifting, or anything like that, please feel free to give it a like, a share, a subscribe, or whatever it is on the platform that you're listening to us on. Until next time, stay in the state of grace, and God bless, friends.